Ever get that feeling? You know, like you just know something's about to happen.
Hmm.
Or maybe you've felt someone else's emotion so strongly, it's almost like they're your own.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into that realm, the fascinating and often debated world of extrasensory perception, or ESP,
Okay.
and its possible connection to autism.
ESP might seem like something out of science fiction,
Right.
but this idea that it could be linked to autism keeps popping up.
Yeah.
We're not saying everyone on the spectrum is suddenly a psychic,
Right.
but there's definitely something there.
Yeah, that overlap in experiences is worth exploring, for sure.
Definitely.
And that's what we're here to do today.
Right.
Not to prove or disprove ESP,
Okay.
but to try and understand why this connection exists.
Yeah.
We've got some really fascinating source material from Cheap ABA,
Okay.
which is a resource for autistic individuals and families, and they suggest a pretty strong link between the two.
Interesting.
Before we jump into all that, though,
Yeah.
let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
What exactly is ESP?
Well, ESP is kind of a catch-all term
Okay.
for a whole range of experiences.
Got it.
Like, think telepathy,
Okay.
that mind-to-mind communication, or clairvoyance.
Like a remote viewing kind of thing?
Yeah, almost like that.
Okay.
And then there's precognition.
Knowing the future stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, scientifically, ESP is still highly debated,
Right.
but the experiences themselves,
Yeah.
they're more common than you might think.
And according to Cheap ABA, these experiences might be even more common among autistic individuals.
That's what they're suggesting.
This idea that autistic people might be more sensitive to, like, energies and frequencies.
So things most of us don't even register.
Right.
It's pretty fascinating.
It really is.
But it also raises a ton of questions.
Yeah, like why would that be?
Exactly, like why?
Why would this be the case?
Well, the source points to the way autistic brains are wired,
Okay.
literally differently. And they suggest that these differences could lead to, like,
A heightened sensitivity to subtle energies.
Okay.
Things that fly under the radar for most people.
So instead of just being sensitive to the physical world,
Yeah.
they might be picking up on an entirely different layer of information.
It's a possibility.
That's pretty wild.
It is a wild concept.
But how would that even work?
Well, if we look at the research,
Okay.
there's growing evidence that autistic individuals may have different patterns of brain connectivity.
So,
One study actually used brain imaging to show that certain areas of the brain,
okay.
particularly those involved in sensory processing and social cognition,
Right.
communicate differently in autistic individuals.
Mm.
This difference, they suggest, could potentially create a pathway for ESP experiences.
So it's not just about having a stronger connection in one area,
Right.
but a more intricate web of connections overall.
Yeah, more intricate.
It makes you wonder if that unique wiring might be what allows them to tap into those subtle energies.
That's what they're suggesting.
It's a compelling theory. Definitely.
And it also ties in with, like,
Yeah.
the incredible pattern recognition skills that many autistic individuals have.
Absolutely.
They're often so detail-oriented,
Right.
picking up on nuances that others miss.
Totally.
This ability to see patterns and connections
Mm-hmm.
could be crucial for interpreting those subtle ESP-related signs.
It could be.
It's like they're piecing together a puzzle,
Yeah.
but with pieces that most of us don't even realize are there.
Right.
But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've talked about the possible why behind this connection,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the what?
Implications.
How could ESP actually benefit autistic individuals?
Well, Cheap ABA suggests that ESP could provide a profound sense of purpose and meaning,
Okay.
especially for those who felt different or misunderstood.
Right.
Imagine feeling like you have a unique gift,
Yeah.
a way to connect to the world that others might not understand. One autistic individual they interviewed actually described it as finally feeling like I had a superpower,
Wow.
something that made me special, not broken.
That's powerful.
It is.
It really highlights how ESP could be a source of validation and empowerment,
Yeah.
especially for those who faced negativity or felt like they don't quite fit in.
Exactly.
And beyond that sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
Cheap ABA also explores how ESP might help with emotional regulation,
Right.
something that many autistic individuals struggle with.
Yeah, it's a common challenge.
I can see that being a game changer.
Absolutely.
So how would ESP help with something like emotional regulation?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
If you're sensitive to the emotions of others,
Right.
as you might be with telepathy,
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly getting this influx of feelings.
Yeah,
It can be overwhelming.
for sure.
But if you learn to manage it, you can develop an incredible sense of empathy and understanding.
Okay.
You might even be able to anticipate the needs of others
Yeah.
before they even express them.
It's almost like having an emotional radar.
Yeah, like a radar.
Picking up on those subtle cues that most people miss.
Exactly.
And if you can learn to navigate that,
Right.
it could be an incredible tool for building stronger relationships.
It really could.
And there's also the potential for, like, greater self-awareness, too.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're attuned to your own emotions
Mm,
and those of others,
right.
you can start to identify patterns and triggers.
Exactly.
This can help you develop coping mechanisms and strategies for managing difficult emotions.
It's about understanding yourself better.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by your emotions,
Right.
you can start to understand them,
Yeah.
work with them,
Work with them.
and even use them to your advantage.
Exactly.
But we've been talking a lot about the potential benefits.
Yeah.
Let's get real for a moment.
Okay.
Does Cheap ABA offer any practical advice
They do?
on how someone could actually explore these ESP abilities?
Yeah. They actually have a whole section on that.
They
But
do.
before we jump into that,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to let all of this sink in. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
We'll be right back to explore the how-to of ESP.
Sounds good. All right, we're back and ready to dive into the practical side of things.
Okay.
Let's say you're listening to this and you're thinking,
Yeah.
okay, this ESP stuff is fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
but how do I even know if I have these abilities?
Right. How do you know?
And if I do, how can I develop them?
Yeah.
What guidance does Cheap ABA offer on that?
Well, they start by emphasizing that
Okay.
exploring ESP is a very personal journey.
Right.
It's not about checking boxes or
Yeah.
following a rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's more about paying attention to your own experiences,
Okay.
trusting your intuition,
Got it.
and being open to the possibility that there's more to the world than meets the eye.
I love that.
Yeah,
It takes the pressure off.
it does.
It's not about becoming some kind of ESP expert overnight.
Right.
It's about that self-discovery,
Yeah.
which feels very empowering. But I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do they suggest any specific starting points?
They do.
Like, where do you even begin to tap into these abilities?
Well, one of their key recommendations is to start with what you already have,
Okay.
your own intuition.
Okay, so those gut feelings.
Exactly, those gut feelings.
Those moments of knowing something without a logical explanation,
Mhm.
those are often glimpses of ESP in action.
That's what they're suggesting.
Okay, so it's about recognizing those moments when they happen.
We're recognizing them.
But how do you distinguish a genuine ESP nudge from just wishful thinking?
That's a good question.
Like, how do you know if it's the real deal
Yeah,
or just your imagination?
that's where the practice comes in.
Okay.
Cheap ABA suggests keeping a journal
Okay.
and just jotting down those instances of knowing something, even if they seem really small or insignificant.
Okay.
Did you have a dream that later came true? Did you
Oh.
suddenly think of someone right before they called?
Mm-hmm.
Write it down.
So it's like training your ESP muscles.
Yeah, like training.
But instead of lifting weights, you're noting down those flashes of insight.
Exactly.
What do you do with that journal, though?
Well, it's about recognizing patterns.
Okay.
Seeing if those moments of knowing actually align with reality.
So maybe you notice that you're particularly intuitive about certain people.
Yeah, certain people or situations.
Or your dreams are often prophetic.
Right.
By tracking these experiences,
Yeah.
you start to develop a deeper understanding of your own ESP abilities.
Exactly.
It's almost like becoming a detective of your own intuition,
Oh, detective, yeah.
looking for clues,
Right.
piecing together the puzzle
Mm-hmm.
of your own unique ESP profile.
Your own ESP fingerprint.
Let's say you've started that journaling process.
Okay.
You're paying attention to your intuition.
Right.
Are there any other practical steps you can take to enhance those abilities?
Cheap ABA goes on to recommend mindfulness and meditation. Think about it this way.
Okay.
ESP is a very subtle signal, easily drowned out by the mental chatter of our everyday thoughts and worries.
Right.
Mindfulness helps to quiet that noise,
Mm.
bringing you into the present moment,
Yeah.
where those ESP signals can come through more clearly.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
It's like creating that mental space where those perceptions can actually surface
exactly.
instead of being lost in the noise.
Right.
And meditation, where does that fit in?
Meditation takes it a step further.
Okay.
It's like training your mind to focus and concentrate,
Okay.
which is essential for working with ESP.
So instead of your mind being all over the place,
Yeah.
you're honing that laser focus,
Focusing that energy.
making it more receptive to those subtle energies.
Right. More receptive.
But with so many types of meditation out there,
Yeah, there are a lot.
are there any that are particularly helpful for ESP development?
There are many forms of meditation,
Right.
but for ESP practices that cultivate awareness of subtle energy are often recommended.
Okay, like what?
Things like Qigong or certain types of yoga can be beneficial.
Interesting.
The source material even includes a few guided meditations,
Okay.
specifically designed to enhance ESP abilities.
That's great.
Yeah,
So it's not just about sitting in silence.
right.
It's about actively working with your energy field,
Working with that energy.
becoming more attuned to those subtle frequencies.
Exactly.
And if someone wanted to take it even further,
Mhm.
does cheap ABA recommend seeking guidance from others?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just like learning any new skill.
Yeah,
Having a teacher or a mentor can make all a difference.
right.
They can provide personalized guidance,
Mhm.
help you navigate challenges,
Okay.
and accelerate your progress.
So it's not about relying on them to tell you the answers,
right.
but about having someone to support and guide you along the way.
Support and guidance is key.
But finding those mentors might be a challenge in itself.
It can be.
Any advice on where to start looking?
Well, it can definitely be tricky, especially in a field like ESP.
Right.
Online communities dedicated to both autism and ESP are a good starting point.
Okay, so there are communities out there.
There are.
There are also organizations that offer training and certification
Yeah.
in various ESP disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that would be particularly valuable for autistic individuals
It could be.
who might be looking for a mentor who understands their unique experiences.
Absolutely. Finding a mentor who can create a safe and supportive environment is crucial.
Yeah, especially when exploring something as personal as ESP,
For sure.
they can help you develop your abilities in a way that feels comfortable and empowering.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got journaling,
Yeah.
mindfulness,
Mindfulness.
meditation,
Meditation.
and finding a mentor.
Finding a mentor.
That's a pretty solid toolkit for exploring ESP.
It's a good starting point.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Right.
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
We talked about different types of ESP.
Right. Telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition.
Yeah.
All those.
Does cheap ABA delve into how those might manifest differently in autistic individuals?
They do.
Okay.
They dedicate an entire section to exploring
Okay.
the unique ways ESP might express itself in autistic people.
Interesting.
And it's really fascinating stuff.
I'm all ears.
Okay. So let's start with telepathy,
Right?
that classic mind-to-mind communication.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you're autistic
Okay.
and you've always struggled with traditional communication,
Right.
spoken language, social cues.
Yeah.
It can feel like a minefield.
That's something we hear a lot from autistic individuals.
It is.
The social world can feel incredibly overwhelming and confusing.
Absolutely.
But what if, instead of struggling to decipher
Yeah.
facial expressions or tone of voice,
Right.
you could bypass all that and connect on a deeper level
A deeper level.
through thoughts and feelings?
Exactly.
So instead of relying on those external cues,
Yeah.
which can be so difficult to interpret, they're tuning into a more direct channel of communication.
A more direct channel.
Precisely.
And there are countless anecdotal accounts
Okay.
from autistic individuals who describe experiencing this.
Hmm.
They talk about knowing what someone's going to say before they say it,
Wow.
or feeling another person's emotions as if they were their own.
That's intense.
It can be very intense.
It almost sounds like a superpower.
It does, in a way.
But I can also imagine it being pretty overwhelming,
Oh, absolutely. It can be incredibly overwhelming.
especially if you're
Yeah.
constantly bombarded with other people's thoughts and emotions.
Right, especially in a crowded or noisy environment.
Yeah.
That's why developing control and discernment is so crucial.
So it's not just about having the ability,
Right.
it's about learning to manage it,
Managing it, filtering out the noise,
but filter out the noise.
and focus on the signals that are important.
That's interesting.
It is.
And that's something that comes with
Yeah.
practice and guidance.
So practice and guidance, for sure.
But let's move on to another fascinating type of ESP.
Okay.
Clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance.
It's often described as a kind of inner seeing,
Yeah, inner seeing.
being able to perceive things
Be-
beyond the normal range of sight.
Beyond normal sight.
So like knowing what's happening in another room
Right.
or even miles away.
Exactly.
And again, if we think about the autistic experience,
Yeah,
many individuals are very visual thinkers.
they are.
They process information in images and patterns.
Right.
So this type of ESP might align well with their cognitive style.
We could.
It's like they're seeing the world through a different lens,
The different lens.
picking up on visual information that most of us miss.
Right.
And cheap ABA offers some examples of how this might manifest.
They do. They share stories of autistic individuals who had visions of events that later came true.
Wow.
Or who have been able to accurately describe places they've never been to before.
That's incredible.
It is.
It really challenges our conventional understanding of how we perceive the world.
How we see things.
What about precognition?
Precognition, knowing the future.
Knowing the future. That's a big one.
Is that something that's come up in relation to autism?
It has.
Okay.
And this one is especially intriguing because it really messes with our linear understanding of time.
Right.
Some autistic individuals report having very vivid dreams that later come true. Or just a strong sense of knowing that a certain event is going to happen.
That must be both amazing and unsettling.
It can be both.
How do you even process that kind of information?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And honestly, we don't have all the answers yet.
Right.
But I think it speaks to a different way of experiencing the world.
Okay.
One that's less bound by conventional notions of time and space.
It's like having access to a different dimension of reality.
Yeah, another dimension.
Where past, present, and future aren't as clear-cut as we might think.
It's not so linear.
And while the scientific research is still catching up,
there are some tantalizing clues emerging.
There are.
For example, there's growing evidence that autistic individuals may have different patterns of brain activity.
Different patterns.
Particularly in the areas involved in processing time.
Okay.
And predicting future events.
Interesting.
So it's not just about those connections between different brain regions.
Right.
But also about how those regions are functioning.
Yeah, or working.
How they're processing information in unique ways.
Unique ways, yeah.
Precisely.
And this difference in brain activity might allow autistic individuals to tap into a stream of information that most of us are simply not aware of.
It's almost like they're receiving a live feed from a different timeline.
A different timeline, yeah.
Picking up on events before they unfold in our linear perception of time.
That's one way to think about it.
It's a mind-boggling concept.
It is mind-boggling.
It really makes you wonder what other hidden abilities might lie dormant within the human brain.
Yeah, what else is in there?
Waiting to be unlocked.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating.
This has been a fascinating exploration.
It has.
Of the different ways ESP might manifest in autistic individuals.
All those different ways.
We've covered telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, and even gotten some glimpses into the brain-based explanations for these phenomena.
We've gone pretty deep.
But before we wrap up part 2, I'm curious. Does cheap ABA touch on the potential downsides or challenges of experiencing ESP?
Yes.
Especially for autistic individuals.
Yes, especially for autistic individuals.
You were just talking about all the different ways ESP might show up, especially for those on the autism spectrum.
Right.
But like we were saying, it's not all sunshine and roses.
It's not.
Right.
There's definitely a flip side.
There's got to be a flip side to having these abilities.
Yeah.
Does cheap ABA address any of the potential downsides?
They do.
Or challenges?
Yeah, they actually dedicate a whole section to it. Okay. Emphasizing that ESP, while potentially empowering, can also be incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah.
Especially for autistic individuals who might already be dealing with sensory sensitivities and social anxieties.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like, even if you have a superpower, it doesn't mean it's easy to control. Or manage.
It's not always easy.
Especially if you're already navigating a world that feels overstimulating.
For sure.
What kind of challenges do they highlight?
Well, one of the biggest ones they talk about is the difficulty of filtering out information.
Okay.
Imagine being constantly bombarded with thoughts and emotions and sensory input from other people or even from the environment itself.
Yeah.
It's like trying to have a conversation in a crowded room where everyone's shouting at the same time.
I can see how that would be incredibly overwhelming.
It's a lot.
Even for someone who isn't autistic.
Right.
But for those who are already sensitive to sensory overload, it could be debilitating.
It really could.
And it's not just about the quantity of information. It's also about the intensity.
The intensity,
Autistic individuals often experience emotions very deeply.
They do.
And if you're also picking up on the amplified emotions of others, it can be an emotional roller coaster.
It's like having your emotional volume turned up to 11 all the time.
It's a good way to put it.
I imagine that can make it really difficult to regulate your own emotions.
For sure.
And maintain a sense of stability.
And it can also lead to like social anxiety and isolation.
It can.
You're constantly picking up on the negative thoughts or judgments of others,
yeah, right.
it can be hard to feel comfortable in social situations.
It makes it harder to connect.
It's almost like having a spotlight shining on your insecurities.
It's a spotlight, yeah.
Amplifying those feelings of self-doubt.
For sure.
And making it even harder to connect with others.
Exactly.
This is where cheap ABA really emphasizes the importance of finding those supportive communities.
Communities are so important.
Mentors.
Mentors, too.
Connecting with others who understand what you're going through.
People who get it.
Who can offer guidance and validation.
Yeah, that validation is huge.
Is crucial for navigating the challenges of ESP.
It's essential.
It's like finding your tribe.
Your tribe, yeah.
Those people who get it.
Who get it.
Who can help you make sense of these extraordinary experiences.
Right.
And develop strategies for managing the downsides.
Strategies are key.
But even with support, I imagine there are times when it feels like too much.
Oh, absolutely.
When you just want to turn it off.
You just want to break.
Does cheap ABA offer any advice on
They do.
how to cope with those overwhelming moments?
Yeah, they talk about the importance of grounding techniques.
Okay.
Ways to reconnect with your physical body.
Right.
And the present moment.
Yeah.
When things feel like they're spinning out of control.
So simple things like deep breathing.
Deep breathing.
Taking a walk in nature.
Getting out in nature.
Or listening to calming music.
Yeah, anything that helps you relax.
Can help to bring you back to center.
Back to center.
So it's about having those tools in your back pocket.
Tools are essential.
Those go-to strategies.
Right.
For regaining a sense of control when the ESP signal gets too strong.
When it's just too much.
And they also emphasize the importance of boundaries, right?
Boundaries are huge.
Learning to set boundaries is crucial for anyone experiencing ESP.
It is.
But it's especially important for autistic individuals.
Yeah.
Who might be more susceptible to absorbing the energy of others.
For sure.
This might involve like limiting your exposure.
Right, limiting exposure.
To certain people or environments.
Yeah, certain people can be tough.
Or practicing visualization techniques.
Visualization can be helpful.
To create an energetic shield around yourself.
An energetic shield, I like that.
Like building an emotional force field.
A force field, yeah.
Protecting yourself from those energy vampires.
Those energy vampires.
Who might drain you or trigger those overwhelming ESP experiences.
It's about protecting your energy.
But it's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It is a balance.
Because you don't want to isolate yourself completely.
Right.
Or shut down those abilities altogether.
We don't want to shut down.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
That sweet spot, yeah.
That place where you can embrace your ESP gifts.
Mm-hmm.
While also taking care of your own well-being.
Self-care is so important.
And that's a journey that's unique to each individual.
Everyone's different.
It's a reminder that ESP, like anything else,
right,
has its nuances.
It does.
Its complexities.
It's not simple.
It's not just about psychic powers
right,
or special abilities.
It's deeper than that.
It's about understanding the full spectrum of the experience.
The full spectrum.
The highs and the lows.
The ups and downs.
And finding ways to integrate it into your life.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that feels authentic and empowering.
Authentic and empowering. That's a great way to put it.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from cheap ABA.
I think so too.
They're not just promoting ESP as some kind of magical solution.
Right.
They're acknowledging the real challenge.
The real challenges, yeah.
And offering practical guidance for navigating them.
Practical advice. That's what people need.
So for those listening who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this.
Yeah.
Maybe even a bit scared.
It can be a lot to take in.
What's the one message you'd want them to take away from our deep dive?
If I could offer one piece of advice,
yeah,
it would be to approach ESP with curiosity and compassion.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to explore your own experiences, but also be gentle with yourself.
Be gentle with yourself, yeah.
This is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And there's no right or wrong way to do it.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
And if you're feeling drawn to this world,
yeah,
if you're sensing that there's something more to reality than meets the eye,
more than we can see,
don't dismiss it.
Explore
it.
But do it with a sense of mindfulness.
Mindfulness and self-care.
Self-care is so important.
It is.
And remember, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
There are communities, resources, and mentors out there.
There are.
Who can support you on this journey.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has been.
Into the world of autism and ESP.
Fascinating stuff.
We've explored the potential connections.
The connections.
The possible benefits.
The benefits.
The very real challenges.
The challenges.
And even some practical steps.
Practical steps.
For those who want to explore their own abilities.
For those who are curious.
What started as a simple question.
A simple question.
Could there be a link between autism and ESP?
Yeah.
Has opened up a universe of possibilities.
It really has.
It's a reminder that the human brain is a vast and mysterious landscape.
It's amazing.
And we're only just beginning to understand its full potential.
We're just scratching the surface.
So as we wrap up this episode,
we want to leave you with a sense of wonder.
Wonder.
And a thirst for exploration.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking questions.
Ask those questions.
Keep challenging assumptions.
Challenge everything.
And most importantly, keep your mind open.
And your mind.
To the infinite possibilities that exist within you.
The possibilities are endless.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.